Welcome back to another exciting episode of bringing Jesus back into focus. He was a great spiritual teacher. He and Buddha were two of the greatest that I personally study with and about. I was born into the Jewish Christian Catholic Church when I was 1957 I was born, so 69 years ago. And but I left when I was 16 or 17 because they were teaching that the Jewish religion, the Old Testament, I'm not sure why we've got that in the Christian churches, but it's there. And they were teaching that they're two-headed God Yahweh. There are two Yahwehs in the Jewish religion. Everyone knows that who's just simply intelligent and logical. There are two opposing gods, a war god, a brutal killing, murdering, revengeful, thieving war god called Yahweh, one. And then there's Yahweh two, the God of love. Just as the Romans had Mars, a brutal killing, thieving, murdering war god, exactly the same. Mars is exactly the same as the Jewish war god Mars. There's no difference. Sekhmet, the Egyptian war god, the Greek war god Ares, and the Jewish war god Yahweh. They're all the same satanic, filthy war gods. Jesus said, "You're children of Satan." He was a murderer and a liar from the start. He was talking about the war god that they're worshipping, and unfortunately they've still got it in their scripture. Goodness knows why. And then they had a god of love, you see, as the Romans had Pax, the god of peace, and the Egyptians, the Greeks had Irene, another temple, another god, peace, love. Make friends with your relative neighbours, your neighbours who are nearby to you, and make friends with them. And don't attack that other country next to you. Share the river of the water with them between the countries or whatever. So that's a different God, you see, the Pax, God of peace and love. And the Jews, they also had a very different God to their stinking, filthy war God, Yahweh one. They had a God of love. Love your neighbour as yourself in Leviticus. That was for Jew, love Jew. And then it was also, though, in Leviticus, and if a foreigner is amongst you, love them as if they're Jewish, and love them as yourself. So there's the loving God, you see. That's a different God. So they had what they call the good prophets and the evil prophets. The evil ones talked about, go to war, kill, murder. Yahweh tells us to kill and steal, They're all the evil prophets. Then you got the good prophets who are trying to help the Jews become more peaceful, loving. But Jesus, of course, became totally spiritually enlightened. He became at one with love. So he cuts the head of the war god off the body of Yahweh, one body, two heads. So when I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church, I went across to the Buddhist monks, because I knew Buddha was a pacifist, so I wanted to find out more about his teachings, because Jesus was a pacifist, and every Christian on earth should be a pacifist. There shouldn't be any Christians in any army in the world, unless you're a doctor and a nurse or something like that. That's the only way you would ever have employment in an army or a navy or an air force, if you're a doctor or a nurse and you don't carry a gun. So no Christian can be in any army in the world. If you are, you're not a Christian. You're a Jewish Christian. And that was the 4th century, where Constantine, under the influence of Emperor Constantine, the church leaders became corrupted, and they allowed people to kill and murder in the name of Jesus and God. But it's not the God of Jesus anymore. It's the two-headed God of the Jews, you see. So that's why everyone's Judeo-Christian now. But I'm not. I've never been a Jewish Christian. I never will be. So cut the Bible in two and get rid of the Jewish religion out of all Christian churches. There's some love in it, sure, but there's love in the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, Buddhist teachings, the Baha'i faith. I mean, there's love all over the place. But the Jewish religion's not only love, whereas Jesus is only love. Rip out the book of Revelation, because that's the book of Daniel from the Jewish religion, Old Testament. That shouldn't be in the New Testament. That's an Old Testament book. It belongs to the Jews. Get rid of it, because some apocalyptic Jew undercover agent dropped Jesus and the loving spiritual life force right in the middle of this stinking, filthy apocalypse. And Jesus is supposed to be the one coming on the clouds to make it all happen. So children starve to death, and they have terrible sores over their bodies. He poisons the waters of the rivers. He causes men to fight in wars against each other. Jesus is supposed to instigate all this. Everything that is the exact opposite of what he taught and who he was and who the loving Creator is. He said, I can only do what the loving Creator shows me to do. Well, what did he do? He healed the sick. He fed the hungry. He said, love your enemies. The loving Creator is only love. The Jewish Christians are teaching a filthy lie to everyone. They're saying the God of the Jews, the two-headed God of the Jews, is the God of Jesus. That's a filthy lie, and they shouldn't teach it. So I go on about it because it's the truth, and I don't like people slandering him. When I left, I took him with me. When I left the Jewish Christian Catholic Church, I didn't leave him. His words went deep into me and have always been with me, and I love them. And I love Buddha's teachings as well. So that's the book, The Gospels of Jesus Unplugged. It should be published on the 11th of March 2026. I've had a bit of trouble with the covers and the publishers, the printers. But look, hopefully I'll soon have it sorted out. But it's due to be published on the 11th, available around the world. And they are the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John and Thomas. And they have a much clearer translation and a much better presentation, because I've cut out all the Jewish overlays and all the incorrect translations that are in the standard Gospels of the world. And it's a much clearer, concise sort of presentation of his message of, you have two bodies, one is spiritual, one is flesh. The flesh dies, feed it to the vultures, they are his words in the Gospels, and the other one leaves your body at the time of death and goes to be near to the source of your spiritual body, which is a spiritual world and a spiritual creator. Our earthly body is made of earthly material things, water, gases, foods, etc., bones, calcium, minerals, chemicals. But your spiritual body is only empowered by a spiritual life force, and it's a spiritual body. It's not physical. Your dead body of flesh never rises again from the ground. That's it. It's finished. The apocalypse is the day you die. That's your apocalypse. That's my apocalypse. So you have to be ready to die, Jesus said, and leave your body behind and leave in a spiritual body that's full of love. And you must do it now. And that's the core of his message. I'll just read the first paragraph of the back of the book here, just to give you an idea of the general dialogue of what Jesus was all about. Jesus taught we can all experience an inner spiritual awakening if we search for it. He called this the treasure hidden in the field of earth or flesh. This is our eternal spiritual identity, empowered only by the loving spiritual life force of our loving spiritual creator. Our bodies of flesh are only temporary and empowered by earthly things, and all flesh dies. Only our spiritual body and soul mind of love lives on to come into the presence of our loving creator, to reap as we have sown. His teachings and spiritual way of love and non-violence can help awaken us all into a new spiritual life here on earth, leading us to the heavenly spiritual world of love after death. Jesus taught we all have two different bodies with us in one, and he said that the spiritual body, being eternal, is the most important to be healthy and well in spirit. He provides us with the spiritual instructions to follow and become at one with, to be awakened and transformed into spiritual children of light of our loving spiritual creator in heaven. So that's the general Gospels that are, I have done my very best to present him in the way that he intended, as a child of love and non-violence, from a spiritually awakened child. He and Buddha both had what's called the clear light mind experience. Jesus described it as being, if your eye is single, your whole body will be filled with light. Now, when your eye is single, you're seeing everything through the eye of love. And that's the only way you can be a fully spiritually awakened child of the loving spiritual creator who's only love, in a heavenly spiritual world that's only love. You have to be only love. And he said that in the Gospels. So that's what I teach or share. I'm just reiterating what he says because I believe it. Whereas these Jewish Christians are lying and they're distorting him. Some of them are really bad. Some of them are just synagogues. Some of the ones I visited some Christian, supposedly Christian churches. All they went on and on about was the old Jewish religion and the book of Revelation, and he's coming back on the clouds, he's coming soon, and we're going to be saved, but no one else will be. Just a lot of rubbish. So I had to do this book. This is the Gospels, and then there's the Teachings of Jesus Unplugged, which is another book already published, which explains in more detail why the Jews have two gods. It's quite clear they do. We prove that, and we prove that Jesus is only linked to love, and then his words save you, not his blood. So there's a few things I correct in the Teachings Unplugged. This is the contents of this book, and we're up to Matthew part 2, I think it is. So we'll get into that now. It's quite a long chapter, so I just do segments of it and then put it into parts. This will be part 2 of Matthew. So we'll get on with that right now. So the Gospel of Matthew. Judge not. Matthew 7:1-6. I don't repeat his sayings. Any sayings that are repeated throughout the Gospels, I do not have them repeated in the Gospel of Luke and John and Mark. Whatever is repeated from Matthew, they're all together here as one saying. They're all put together to make up one full saying. So this is Matthew 7:1-6, and it's also incorporating the Luke 6:37-42 saying. So it's all just the one saying, even though it may be repeated 2 or 3 times in the other Gospels. Judge not. Jesus said, "Judge not, and you will not be judged. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. And whatever you give out to others will be the same. You will receive back." So this is very much the Buddha karma law of karmic, the consequences. Your actions have karmic consequences. There's actions and reactions, or actions and consequences of your actions or words or thoughts. They cause consequences. And those consequences come back to you. What goes around comes around is a fairly common saying, a modern version of karma, or as Jesus said, with what measure you give out, it shall be given back to you. You'll reap as you sow. So these two great teachers of Jesus and Buddha, they both taught the same thing up to this sort of degree of level of understanding that they both had. So the author, Jesus gives these extremely important and vital characteristics of our spiritual identity we must become at one with to enter the heavenly spiritual world. And he warns us of the spiritual law of the ever-flowing river called reaping as we sow, that we must all cross over to reach heaven's shore. So when we judge others, we have to be very careful. We're only judging the actions of someone, or the words, whatever they may be doing. If someone's doing something very evil, we have to judge that as evil. Netanyahu, stop slaughtering all those Palestinian children, you satanic bastard. Vladimir Putin, you satanic bastard, stop slaughtering all those Ukraine people. So you Hamas bastard, stop slaughtering the Jewish children. And so it goes. They're all satanic, all of them. They're all Satan's army. They think they wear different uniforms, but they've all got a big S written on them. They can't see it. It's right on their forehead. S. I work for Satan. I'm a murderer. I worship death and Satan. I'm a warmonger. So these children, we have to judge them as being, their actions are evil, and they have become evil. They're a false figure. But the idea is we judge them in that way to help them understand they've become something that's a stinking, filthy lie. They're a lie unto themselves. So we judge their actions and we condemn their actions. But I don't condemn their spirit or judge their spirit to hell. I warn them their spirit's going to go to hell, but I can't send them there, and I wouldn't. We have to save them from hell. And I condemn them for what they're doing, but I don't condemn them to hell. I don't need to anyway, because they create their own hell and they go there under their own volition. So Netanyahu and the entire Israeli army will be in hell. Same with the Russian Putin and all his army, they'll all be in hell. Same with the Ukraine soldiers, they'll all be in hell. You can't be a soldier and kill and murder other children and go to heaven. I'm sorry, but that's the way Buddha and Jesus taught it. And I believe that. That's true. The way of Jesus is the pacifist way. The way of Buddha is the pacifist way. All bodies of flesh are temporary. Only your spirit lives on. Don't hurt anyone. Be a light in the darkness. So we can judge sort of actions and things, but we can't judge a person. We sort of judge ourselves. That's what karma's all about, really. You're your own judge, and you reap as you sow. So, but we mustn't, be condemning children or others for no good reason. You want to have a good reason to condemn anyone's actions, but the reason's quite simple. They're causing suffering. They're doing something evil. So we condemn the action. but we never condemn the spiritual child because they're not themselves. You might say they're a fake identity, a dark shadow figure. And that's the idea. We break the shadow figure around them apart if we can to reveal the true child within them. It's a loving child. They've lost touch with that. They've moved out of their spiritual body into the flesh, and the flesh body out of the brain. They imagine, I'm Vladimir Putin, I'm a great killer, I'm a great man. That's all his figment of his imagination. He's insane. Same as Netanyahu, he's mentally insane. And their armies become insane. It's like they're all poisoned with these dark, evil, stinking, satanic thoughts. They all think they're so, wonderful and powerful. Look at my bombs. Look at all these bodies I kill. So they're insane children. We know that. They're mentally insane. But their brain's working so they can kill and murder. But it's just a brain of the flesh, a mind of the flesh. And that brain mind rots and stinks and dies. Their spiritual mind of love now is so tiny. There's just a little spark of light left in their spiritual body. And when they do die, they're going to be surrounded by layers and layers and layers and layers and layers and layers of death, of filth and death. And they're going to have to go through every single death they've caused. They're going to have to experience it. So Netanyahu might die 80,000 times before he ever gets anywhere close to being clean again. Same with Putin. However many children they've killed, that's how many times they'll be dying. And they'll be in the darkness, screaming and yelling with no one there, just themselves. So there's no need to judge anyone, to kill anyone. They're heading for hell anyway. But we must judge their actions. So, and anyone can go to hell, and we praise good people and say, you're going to heaven. So we judge that they're going to heaven by their actions. That's another form of judgment, that we judge, gee, you're so good, you'll be in heaven. That's a judgment we make too, but it's a judging on their actions that they're good. We judge another person, you're going to hell. It's just an observation, not so much we don't judge and condemn and send them somewhere. That's not like that. We can't do that. Have I rambled on a bit there? Speck in your eye, Matthew 7:3-5. Jesus said, why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not notice the plank in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me remove the speck from your eye, while the plank is in your own eye? You hypocrite! First remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see more clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. If the blind lead the blind, they will both fall into a ditch. Obviously, if we're going to judge someone's actions or condemn someone's actions, we better not be doing them ourselves, because then our words are worthless. They're worth nothing. You have to be doing the opposite of what these warmongering satanic bastards are doing in the world. We've got to be children of peace, and I'm a pacifist, so I can condemn them, their actions, that is to say, and condemn their evil. I can condemn and judge their evil as being filthy, stinking, satanic evil, because I do not do it. So we can't be a hypocrite. If I'm in another army killing somewhere else, and I say, your army's no good killing there. I'm busy over here killing these people, though. I'm a good soldier killing the people. There are no good soldiers. Pearls before swine, Matthew 7:6. Jesus said, do not give what is holy to the dogs, for they may drop it in a pile of manure. And do not cast your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, making them worthless, and turn and tear you to pieces. The author. When we share the spiritual teachings with other children, we must first gauge their readiness to receive them. Then we must adjust our delivery of the spiritual way accordingly to fit each child's personal situation, beliefs and character. This may mean a gradual unfolding of the spiritual way, beginning with basic logical elements that could lead to an awakening of the deeper spiritual beliefs. But to share deep spiritual beliefs with someone who is not at all familiar with them or is against them could cause them to ridicule you and the spiritual teachings, causing them to move further away from spiritual belief. You see those spruikers in the street. I run into them here in Melbourne, and they got the speakers, and in the middle of some busy street, Jesus will save you, and if you're not coming to Jesus, you will go to hell. I mean, they're out there driving people away from Jesus. They're Jewish Christians. Those children, they're not Christians. They're Jewish Christians. They think Jesus is the only one who can save you, and all this sort of rubbish. So we have to be very careful. We offer the teachings. We offer to share our teachings and our beliefs. But if someone says, I don't believe any of that crap, that's all rubbish. Well, you don't try to you certainly don't threaten them and say, "Oh, you're not going to go to heaven then." You know? A Jewish Christian condemned me because I didn't believe Jesus' blood saves me. And I said, no, his words save us, not his blood. That's about the two bodies. The one on the cross dies and he moves off in his spiritual body. That's a different thing. But that Jewish Christian said, "Oh, well, you're not going to heaven because you don't believe what I believe, that his blood saves us of all our sins or something." And I said, "Oh, no, that's a Jewish belief. That's a lamb sacrifice. That's a Jewish thing." So these Jewish Christians are quick to condemn and judge, which Jesus said not to do. It's one thing to say, "I don't see it your way, I see it differently." That's one way to say it, but to judge and condemn, "You're not going to heaven." Wait a minute. You shouldn't say that. So pearls before swine. So we share the beliefs. By a living example, you share the beliefs anyway. If you're a loving, kind person, and people may, say, "Gee, you're such a kind, caring person," you may then say, "Well, I'm a Christian," or I'm a pacifist, Buddhist, or I'm a pacifist Jew. There's probably at least 5% of Jews are pacifists, and I'm a pacifist Muslim, or I'm a pacifist Hindu. I've taken the vow of ahimsa that Mahatma Gandhi took, where, the ahimsa vow of non-violence. So it does exist in certain religions, this commitment to non-violence. That's when you're becoming spiritual, only then. You're moving into complete spirituality once you commit to love and non-violence, the way that Jesus taught. So we've got to be careful when we share the faith, and people will attack you as well. As we know, people will kill each other because of their religion. But they're not spiritual. They've turned into beasts of the flesh again, you see. They've lost their way again. They've perverted their own religion. The narrow way, Matthew 7:12-14, Jesus said, "Therefore, whatever you want others to do to you, do also to them. For this is the spiritual way of the law of love and the good prophets. Enter by the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and there are many who go in that way. Because narrow is the gate and difficult is the way that leads to true spiritual life, and there are few that find it." That last bit's a bit daunting, isn't it? There are few that find the way to heaven from this dualistic, dangerous material world of good and evil. Author: we must find the elusive spiritual path and way of only love and non-violence that leads us through this dangerous material world to heaven. By awakening to our true spiritual body and soul mind of love, guided and inspired by the words of Jesus, we will be able to navigate through the dangerous waters of this earth world and reach the haven of heaven. And the golden rule to guide our spiritual practice is to treat others as you would like to be treated by them, remembering we all reap as we have sown. Known by their fruits, Matthew 7:15-20. Jesus said, "Beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. You will know them by their fruits. Are grapes gathered from thorny bushes or figs from thistles? For no good tree can bear evil fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. A good person out of the good treasure of their heart brings forth good, and an evil person out of the evil treasure in their heart brings forth evil. For out of the abundance of the heart their mouth speaks. I say to you that for every idle word men may speak, they will give account of it on their judgment day at death. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. Either make the tree good and its fruit good, or make the tree evil and its fruit evil, for the person is known by their fruit. Therefore every tree that does not bear good fruit is removed, and must enter into the cleansing fire of truth and burning realizations." Author: Jesus warns us of children who can lead us astray from the spiritual path of love and non-violence that leads us to heaven. We only have to observe their behavior and speech to see if they match the spiritual way of true love as Jesus taught. Jewish Christians say Yahweh, the two-headed God of the Jews, is the one God of Jesus. Christians, like me, say only the one loving spiritual creator is the source of the spiritual life and way of love that Jesus became at one with and taught us to be also. So I would say the Jewish Christians are sheep in wolves' clothing. We must dedicate our life to bringing loving actions into this world from within our heart and soul, and never manifest anything evil. Jesus also reminds us to guard our words as they echo the state of our heart and spirit. And at the time of our death experience, every word we have ever spoken is known by our loving Creator, just as the state of our spirit is known by her. Jesus warns us we will all reap as we have sown. And any child on earth who lives out of the loving spiritual way that Jesus taught will enter the heavenly spiritual world, whether they know him or not. It is his spiritual way of life that leads any child to the heavenly spiritual world. So a Muslim, Christian, Buddhist, Hindu, Jew, Zoroastrian, Baha'i, atheist, humanitarian, native spiritual child, or any other child can become a spiritual child of our loving spiritual Creator by following the same way of love from within their own life or religion. But it must be love only. Many Jewish Christians falsely teach only Christians will be allowed to enter heaven. They should not say that. Jesus is inclusive, not exclusive, like the Jews or others. I never knew you. Matthew 7:21-23, Jesus said, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, but do not follow what I tell you to do?" Now, I'll stop there. That's a standalone statement. He's teaching, he's teaching, he's teaching. He's giving them instructions, how to behave, how to forgive, how to be compassionate, how not to judge, how to love your enemies. His words help you awaken to your true spiritual identity. But even then at that stage, that early stage, people were worshipping him, mobbing him. It was like the Beatles, you know. People were mobbing him. Oh, Lord, Lord, Jesus, oh, we love you, Jesus, you know. But he realized they were already beginning a sort of cult of worshipping him when he was already trying to get them back to, no, don't, you call me Lord, Lord, okay, great. But you're not following, you're not listening to what I'm telling you. It's my words that are the important thing that I'm giving you, because the words will heal you and bring you alive in spirit. My words, they are spirit and they are life, he said. So even at this early stage, why do you call me Lord, Lord, but do not do what I tell you? I've met Jewish Christians who love him, love him, love him, love him, but take almost no notice of his words. It's extraordinary. Moving on, not everyone who calls me Lord shall enter the heavenly spiritual world, but only he who lives out of the spiritual way of love, of our loving spiritual Creator, will enter. So he brings you into the spiritual way of love through his words, and they're the ones who wake up to that and become at one with those words. They get transformed by the words, and they'll follow him to heaven. We'll follow him to heaven. But just to praise him, praise him, praise him. Oh, you're the greatest. No one else is as good as you. You're the only one who can save us. Thanks so much. Thanks, and we love you, we love you, we love you. Oh, I hate those people over there. I love you, Jesus. You know, don't hate them. You're not listening to his words. You know, I'm never going to forgive you. Oh, I love you, Jesus. I love you, Jesus. No, forgive that person. You see, that's what happens. They fall into that trap of loving him so much they forget about his words. So it's very important. Now it goes on here, I guess there's a little bit of a confusion here between two different sayings in the Gospels that are sort of opposite, but we'll go through them. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, have we not prophesied coming events in your name, cast out demons in your name, and performed many miracles in your name? And I'll say to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice violations of the law. So some people were using his name to work miracles apparently, but Jesus is sort of saying, but you were never really as good as you should have been. You practiced violations of the law. So they were doing something else that was wrong. And Jesus sort of knew that some people who were working in his name were like the sheep in wolf's clothing. So that's what he's referring to, I guess. But in John's Gospel, I think it's John's, one of the disciples says, Jesus, we saw people casting out demons in your name and healing them. We said, don't do it. You're not one of us. And Jesus said, let them do it. If they're doing good in my name, let them do it. So in the other saying in the Gospels, those people, I guess, weren't doing anything bad as well as healing. So they were okay with Jesus, but these ones are doing something wrong. And so, or they're doing it for a poor, bad purpose, perhaps to gain money or something. So anyway, Luke 13:25, Jesus said, when the master of the house has risen up and shut the door, and you begin to stand outside and knock at the door, saying, Lord, Lord, open for us, he will answer, I do not know you or where you are from. Then you will say, but we ate and drank in your presence, and you taught in our streets. But he will answer, I tell you, I do not know you, for you are from a different place to me. Depart from me, all you workers of iniquity. This is slightly different, because this is much more a matter of just people are coming to Jesus and going, oh, great, Jesus, here, we're here now, let us in. And he's going, I don't know you. And he, but we were there in the street when you was preaching and teaching, and we drank there while we listened to you, and we were on the same table, and while you taught, yeah, we know you, we saw you. And he's going, no, you're from a different place to me. Depart from me, you workers of iniquity. So again, this is just, he's pointing out here that lots of people listened to him, but they didn't change. They weren't transformed by his words, so they were from a different place. He's from heaven. Once you become spiritually enlightened on earth, your home is heaven. Earth's not your home anymore. He was from heaven. Once he became spiritually enlightened, as Buddha became enlightened, nirvana, Buddha calls heaven nirvana, Jesus calls nirvana heaven. It's the same place, a place of no suffering with complete enlightenment and peace and love. It's the same world, so different language. But so Jesus is saying, yeah, you saw me, yeah, you were listening to me, oh yeah, you touched me and waved at me and things and cheered me, but you don't listen to my words. You haven't transformed, you haven't changed, you're not like me. So this is the big problem with a lot of, some Jewish Christians who, they're just Jewish, they're not Christians at all. So they love him, but they don't do what he says. Also, the first paragraph of this saying is accurate and correct, but the second part is difficult to reconcile with another direction of Jesus at Mark 9:39 and Luke 9:49, when he said those who work a miracle in his name are for him and should be allowed to do so. We can only conclude the ones he is referring to here were using the miracles and other wonders they performed in his name for a personal gain, not as true selfless spiritual children of our loving Creator. It may also be a simple error in early translations that has lost some of the original words and meaning. The other version in Luke 13:25 may well be the original and correct version. So the 25 to 27 one, where someone's outside the door knocking, saying, "Oh, we've come, we've died, we're ready to enter heaven with where you are now, Jesus. We saw you on the street, we were waving at you and cheering you, and we drank on the same table with you." And he's going, "Yeah, but I don't really know you. You haven't transformed to become spiritual yet." That's probably the original one that goes along with the committing wrong things. Commit to the spiritual way. Matthew 8:18. A scribe came to Jesus and said to him, "I'll follow you wherever you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have holes, birds of the air have nests, but the spiritual child of a loving Creator in heaven has nowhere here on earth to lay his head and call his home." Then another who wanted to follow Jesus said, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." Jesus replied, "Follow me, and let those dead to their spirit bury their own dead. But you go now and proclaim the heavenly spiritual kingdom of our loving spiritual Creator." Another said, "I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those of my household." Jesus replied, "No one who puts his hand to the plough and looks back is fit for the heavenly spiritual world of our loving Creator." Author. While these requests made by the followers seem reasonable, Jesus uses them to convey the urgency for all of us to first become living spiritual children before our body of flesh dies. Earthly, worldly affairs are secondary to our spiritual awakening. Jesus himself says this earth is no longer his true home, since he became spiritually awakened and at one with the heavenly spiritual world. This requires an ongoing daily commitment to awaken to our true spiritual identity and live as a spiritual child right now. So the commitment, of course, we have a commitment to be spiritual to varying degrees, as much as we can allow in our life, working, earning a living, 5-6 days a week, family responsibilities, paying mortgages, paying bills, whatever else we have to do. The commitment is total, though, in the way we work. We work honestly. We treat people decently in our workplace or in our job or our career. And then at home we love our family, we care for our neighbours, watch out for them. If we see someone on the street fall over, we go and help them. So we live constantly practicing the living way of spirit of love. But to follow Jesus fully, it does have to be a complete commitment. Your whole life becomes primarily a spiritual act of love on earth. Then you are, in fact, following him. And then you can, of course, care for your dying father or bury your parents or go and meet your family or visit your family who need perhaps some help or something, because it all becomes an act of love. But you really have to be spiritually awakened first. And that's Jesus' main point here. Are you ready? Are you spiritually awakened? Because if you are, then you can go and do these other things, because you're bringing this beautiful love from heaven to the situation. But he's also saying, don't get tangled up in just material, secondary earthly activities without this beautiful spiritual awakening. You have to have that first. Then bring it into the activity itself. Then you've got it. You're ready to die then. Jesus loves sinners. Matthew 9:9-13. Jesus saw a tax collector named Matthew sitting at the tax office, and he said to him, "Follow me." So Matthew arose and followed him. Now Matthew made a great feast in this house for Jesus and his disciples, and many tax collectors and sinners came and sat down with them at the table. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked the disciples, "Why does Jesus eat with tax collectors and sinners?" Jesus heard them and answered, "Those who are spiritually well have no need of a doctor, but those who are ill do. Go and learn what this saying means. I desire compassion, not sacrifice. For I do not come to call those who are already spiritually well, but sinners who need to change their ways to become spiritual." Author: Jesus had no need to save children who were already spiritually minded in love. He had to bring the spiritual way of love to those in society who were outcasts, sinners, doers of evil, or those condemned who needed to know the loving spiritual Creator cares about them as much as any other child. And there is a place in heaven for them also, if they just change their ways and awaken into their true spiritual identity of love, truth, and non-violence. Fasting without Jesus. Matthew 9:14-15. The disciples of John came to Jesus and asked, "Why do we and the Pharisees fast often, but your disciples do not fast?" Jesus replied, "Can the descendants of the bridal chamber grieve as long as the bridegroom is with them? But the days will come when the bridegroom will be taken away from them, and then they will fast." Author: the question they asked Jesus concerned fasting from eating earthly food for physical nourishment. But Jesus turns it into an answer, referring to his disciples no longer having the nourishment of his words after he leaves, as if fasting. But while he is still with them, they have his words to nourish their spirits. So he's saying, well, my disciples will fast, but they'll be fasting from not being able to get my words anymore. Not being able to have my words, I'll be gone. As opposed to not eating some bread for a day or two because you want to be very spiritual for a day or two. So he's just talking about the spiritual loss of his words. They won't have them anymore. Just as you don't have earthly food when you're fasting, the disciples will no longer have his spiritual words once he's gone. So it's a bit like they're without them. So it's a bit like fasting from food. It's spiritual nourishment. My words, they are spirit and they are life. New wine, old wine. Matthew 9:16-17. Jesus spoke a parable to them. No one tears a piece of cloth from a new garment and sews it onto an old garment, for if he does, the patch will not match the old, and it will lift away from it. the new from the old, and a worse split or schism is made between the two. And no one puts new wine into old worn-out wineskins. If he does, the new wine will burst the old skins, as they cannot hold it, and the new wine will be lost, and the old skins destroyed. But new wine must be put into new wineskins to preserve its purity, and both are preserved. And no man used to drinking old wine desires new wine, for he only knows the old wine, and thinks it is good enough. Thomas 47, Jesus said, "A person cannot mount 2 horses or bend 2 bows, and a servant cannot serve 2 lords. That servant can only respect one, but offends the other by doing so." Author: Jesus warned his followers not to try and mix our one loving spiritual creator he was at one with the Old Testament 2-headed God, Yahweh of the Jews, because they do not match. Yahweh is a dualistic God with one body called Yahweh, but 2 heads. One Godhead is a brutal, murdering, thieving war god, the same as the Roman war god Mars, Greek war god Ares, Egyptian war god Sekhmet. The other Yahweh Godhead is a God of love and peace, the same as the Roman god Pax, the Greek god Irene, and other gods of peace and love at that time. 2 completely different gods. But the Jews lie, and they call them by the same name. It's the same as calling Adolf Hitler is the same as Mother Teresa. They're the 2 Yahwehs. That's how far apart they are. The garment analogy Jesus uses is talking directly about the different spiritual identities of the new understanding of this beautiful loving one, and the garment or identity of Yahweh, this 2-headed God. It's a perverted God. You cannot take a piece of our loving spiritual creator, who is only pure love, and try to sew it onto a dualistic God who loves and saves and hates and murders. If you do, you will lose the understanding of the true loving creator that Jesus taught us about, and pervert and distort her spiritual identity. Unfortunately, all Jewish Christian churches have done this, mixing the 2 different gods together in one wineskin, falsely teaching they are the same God, and they call the one wineskin the Bible. I always advise followers of Jesus to cut the Bible in 2, rip out the book of Revelation, which is the Jewish book of Daniel, and put the Jewish religion up on the shelf with all the other different religions, as they usually all have some love in them, and just stay with the words of Jesus about our loving spiritual creator and the spiritual way of love and non-violence that he gave us to follow to reach heaven. Now, that is ignored by every Jewish Christian church in the world. He's saying, don't mix this loving creator in with the old Jewish war god, Yahweh, whatever you do. Don't put them in the one wineskin. Whatever you do, you'll poison it. And, of course, the Bible's one wineskin with the old wine and the new wine. It's unbelievable they've done it. I mean, it's so obvious a 12-year-old could tell you they've done it. But they actually, when you brainwash people, they believe anything. So that we'll end it there. So that is one of the most important teachings he ever gave, because it protects the one loving spiritual beings of love. It protects her identity. Never mix her in with the Jewish Yahweh God, because there's 2 Yahwehs there, and one is a satanic war god. Jesus said, you are children of Satan, the war god. He was a murderer and a liar from the start, and you do the lusts and desires of Satan. For example, you all went down to Jericho, our ancestors, and murdered every man, woman and child, and stole everything, destroyed the city, and stole the land from them. You follow the war god. You murder like the war god tells you to do. Stop doing it. He told them they were worshipping a satanic war god. So he said, don't mix this one loving creator. This loving creator is even beyond the Yahweh of love. This is the universal creator of all spiritual bodies and every child on earth. Even the satanic child Vladimir Putin or Netanyahu or Hamas, the satanic children of Hamas, or the satanic army of the Israel or the satanic Russian army, they've all still got a beautiful spiritual body inside them. And it all comes from this one true, beautiful spiritual world of heaven and the heavenly spiritual creator who created it for them to have, but they've rejected it and they've covered it in stinking dog filth, dog manure. See, so that they've created their own stinking false life. That's not the Creator's fault. It's a great insult to the loving Creator to dirty and pollute and stink up their beautiful identity that they've now just covered in stinking filth and murder and death. They're worshippers of Satan, worshippers of death. So Jesus is saying, never mix the new way I'm giving you with the old way. But every Jewish Christian church has done that. Mind you, the Quakers, the Amish, Mennonites, the Assyrian Christians, at least they're dedicated pacifist Christians. At least they've got that part correct. But they still read the Jewish religion and they still think Yahweh is one God. And that's a lie. So I advise people to wake up. I mean, just wake up. You know, get over it. The Jews worship two gods. End of story. There's nothing else to say about it. I can't help the Jews. I wish they'd start a new Jewish branch and they cut out all the references to the war god. If a Jewish branch of their Jewish faith woke up, some rabbis woke up and said, wait a minute, this is a war god. What have we been doing? Let's cut all that out of the Torah and the Old Testament. Let's get rid of all that and burn it. Let's just keep the good prophets and this loving Yahweh. That would be a really great Jewish religion. But the funny part is, then that would be a Christian religion. But of course, you've got to rip out the book of Revelation. That's the book of Daniel. That's one of the books you'd have to rip out of the Old Testament anyway, if you wanted to be a loving child, a Jewish loving child of the loving God. Anyway, luckily no one listens to me. Or unluckily, however you want to think about it. So there you go. So you've got two bodies, and we'll stop there because it's a big chapter and it takes a lot of time to get through. And I do tend to ramble a bit, but I love talking about him. I love talking about his loving way and his spiritual teachings. And I do enjoy pointing out the lies and the false teachings of the Jewish Christians. And particularly some of them are really bad, really shockers. They just go on and on about the book of Revelation. They're waiting for Jesus to come back and only they'll be saved. And and all these, and Buddhists are going to be thrown into hell, and people who do any other religion, they're all going to hell. They're not going. Only Jesus are going to hell. They're going to heaven. And they've lost the plot. But they've been brainwashed. But if they get rid of the Jewish religion to start with, rip out the book of Revelation, and then just have that in their church, just his words on love your enemies, have compassion, forgiveness, perfect equanimity, generosity, love, non-violence, then they'll realise, oh, wait a minute, God's only love, which Jesus, of course, said, I can only do what the loving Creator shows me to do. Well, what did he do? He didn't do what the Jewish stinking war god, Yahweh, did, or the Jews. He didn't do that. He didn't go down to Jericho and murder everyone, steal everything. He didn't tell his disciples to do that, did he? You see, that they just get brainwashed with this the Jewish religion is like a poison. Poisons their brains, their minds. And then they have Jesus in there with all the poison. And he said, don't mix this in with the old poisonous Jewish religion, because it's a poisoned religion. It's got a war god in it. It's poisoned. I wish the Jews would cut it out, do themselves a world of good. I'll leave you with this simple line: love your way to heaven, or hate your way to hell. Okay, next part coming up. Okay, next.